Hey everybody, it's Michael Kozlowski here from goodereader.com. We're at the American Library Association Annual Conference 2013 in Chicago, and we're joined today by Jamie LaRue, Douglas County Library System. We're going to talk today about their digital initiatives and exactly what they're doing at the library. So first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Excellent. So we were talking about how your library, unlike almost 99% of the other ones on the market, you're heavily invested in digital. Before we talk about who you're dealing with, what was the main philosophy of dealing with more than one content distribution system?
Okay, I think what it comes down to is there were two trends and then there were three problems. So the first trend was we were seeing that eBooks were on the rise, and many things about the marketplace that enabled us to try to gain access to them had problems. Second one was there was two new streams of content coming out, independent and small presses, and then self-publishing. Neither one of those was available to us. So the three business problems that we started to realize is we had given up ownership. If we were buying something through Overdrive or through 3M, we didn't actually have possession of it, and it wasn't clear that we had the right to own it at all. Second one is we had sacrificed discount. Libraries, because we're volume purchasers, we typically get 45% a knockoff on the consumer price, right? Well, suddenly we were spending $84 for Gone Girl when it cost a consumer $12.99. You can't buy very many books if you're being charged that kind of price. And then the third one was lack of integration. So instead of going to one catalog and finding everything we had, suddenly we discovered that you had to go to Overdrive or to 3M or to who knows how many other silos. So we said we have to solve this so the library isn't even going to be relevant anymore. How do you solve it? You put together your own system for the management of digital content, and so that's what we did.
So let's back up for a moment, if we may, and talk about how your library, you deal with a large number of companies, 3M, Overdrive, you deal with Smashwords as well as publishers directly. That seems like a lot to manage. How do you guys cope with dealing with so many different companies where the average library might just do business with Overdrive or might just do business with 3M? You guys have your hands in a lot of cookie jars.
Well, that's absolutely true, and I think one of the issues we're trying to deal with now is that, so how do you put together a digital back room? You know, for a long time, most libraries have now figured out how to deal with print, although we also gave up a lot of publisher relations to do that. We deal directly with, Baker and Taylor or with Ingram's because it's easier to write one check and then order everything in one place. But then if you do that, you're giving up all these new streams about small and independent and about self-publishing. So absolutely, first step about this was direct contact to a publisher, call them up on the phone and say, we want to buy your stuff. Work through all these difficult things about make sure you send us the file, make sure we've got metadata for it. And that's an interesting discussion with publishers who haven't worked with libraries before. It's like, you want what?
Yeah.
So, well, we need a MARC record, and they're MARC who? And we got to figure out, we'll kind of walk them through this process. So it was a lot of hand-holding, a lot of taking time to explain all of these processes with all the publishers, and definitely a lot of work. But I also think, at this point, we now have 35,000 titles from all of these sources, about 14,000 from Overdrive and 3M, about 11,000 from small and independent, and 10,000 from Smashwords. So we're hoping now to figure out a way to combine all of this into one unified acquisitions dashboard that we're also trying to develop.
So on the back end type of things, traditionally libraries deal with ILS systems, which is basically in layman's terms a way that you could manage all the content in digital lens, monitor statistics, how many times a book has been loaned out, because some big publishers only allow 24 lens before you have to buy another copy, or some charge an exorbitant amount of money for a title. So how do you keep track on the back end of all these different titles from all these different platforms?
Okay. The front end for us is an open source program called ViewFind. So it is a discovery layer. And what we did is we paid a programmer to add a bunch of e-content management functions into that discovery layer. So when a publisher sends us the file, we do full text indexing. We create the metadata record that sits in our ILS. And then all of that indexing sits in ViewFind. So ViewFind actually manages circulation statistics, number of times that it's gone out, all that kind of stuff.
So you guys are doing some innovative things that a lot of libraries wish they can do. has any other library out there contacted you guys or sort of tried to emulate the way that you do business with a large number of small, medium, large presses plus a number of content distribution companies?
Okay, I would imagine we've probably had a good 50 libraries or so that have at least contacted us to express interest. Khalifa, which is a consortium of California libraries, was probably the first one to adopt it. They're live now with it. And much more complex for them than it is for us, because even though we gave them our code, any library can come to a website called evoke.cvlsites.org, and they can download the code, they can see which publishers we deal with, they can find our backroom processing guidelines, all that stuff. We want to encourage as many libraries as possible. But Khalifa has, I think, something like 228 libraries and maybe 11 different ILSs. Complex to try to get that system to talk with all those different kind of backends.
So needless to say, in offering so many digital titles, your library has grown tremendously. What have been the average patron's feedback to suddenly not that many titles available to almost the single most library in America with the most digital books available in a singular institution? How's patrons responded to the sheer number of titles available?
Yeah, what's happened is, so now 35,000 titles, and I kind of view this as opening day collection for a branch, and we're trying to build it up as rapidly as possible. What we've learned is that with these, the infamous Big Six titles, the demand is still pretty strong for those, and we can't buy enough of those because they're so expensive. And I kind of put a limit on that to say, no, if someone's going to charge me $84 for an ebook, we're going to buy it in print because my people will still read it. But I think the other thing that's happening, and this has been kind of fun, is as people start diving into, for instance, the Smashword titles. So 10,000, not Big Six, not big marketing budgets. These are not the people who are on Oprah, right? It is our single most popular publisher right now. Because as people kind of get into this, they say, okay, maybe you're a science fiction reader. You don't care who the publisher is, right? And so if I can give you a steady stream of high quality content, things that are good reads, you'll keep reading them. And so we've seen something like a 200% growth in the use of our ebooks over the space of a year. And I anticipate, we are now seeing 400,000 circulations out of those in the space of a year. So I'm treating it just like a branch. I think it will grow as it finds more and more patrons. We'll see that the curve of use is going to continue to rise.
So when it comes to patrons reading ebooks, obviously most people are familiar with hardcovers, the paperbacks, the types of tangible books that we all grew up with. And now suddenly everyone's moved the shift to digital. What would you say is the ratio, just ballpark-wise, of physical lens and digital lens?
I'll come at that a different way. So about 20% of our patrons, based on the last survey we did, have and use and prefer an ebook reader. But again, the pattern of use is that we're finding that they just read more of anything. Like once you get your ebook reader, it's like you feed the habit, and you're reading more of everything all of the time. So at this point, the use of that whole digital branch is maybe 8% of our circulation, but about 5% of our holdings. So that indicates to me that the demand is still greater than our supply.
One challenge that I've noticed that libraries face is promoting the fact that you have a digital content library. It's often the savvy users, the younger demographic that are with their iPhones, they're with their iPads, they're with their Android devices, and so they're almost too well aware, whereas a lot of people, say over 40, may not be too familiar with digital ebooks, audiobooks, all that jazz. What do you do locally or community-wise to build up awareness of your digital collection?
Well, it's a combination of things. There's the talking circuit where we go around and say, we have launched this digital initiative. There's a lot of pretty focused PR. I handed out to you one of our flyers that we're trying to circulate around to the whole world to let them know that we're offering these things and it's kind of new. We are reaching out to the publishing community. We've been at BEA as an exhibitor to just kind of say, we are looking to buy books from you. The other thing that's been fascinating to me is right now there's a tremendous appetite for the download of our mobile apps. And so I think we've seen in the past year like more downloads of the app than we saw physical visits to the library. I mean, so there's a tremendous growth in that. So I think all those things, people stumble across it, they see it on the website. 2 million visitors come to our website and they see that we've got this digital initiative. And once they get online, they talk to their friends. So those are all the PR mechanisms.
So I guess it's fair to say that you guys are heavily invested in digital and you guys were early adapters. Where do you see the overall library industry going within, say, the next 5 years? Because digital in a lot of markets is still yet to have taken off. Where do you see libraries and digital going, 2014, 2015, and beyond?
I think that there are several steps that are necessary. I'll kind of start at the way up at the top with ALA. I think there needs to be some work done about APIs. Right now, the pressure in the marketplace is to get you into one of these exclusive silos. That's not going to work. Libraries right now have to operate in this kind of mixed environment where we're playing with what can an ILS do, what can a particular vendor do, and there we have to start investing in ways to manage our own content. Even if you buy from Overdrive or 3M, you still need to have your own Adobe content server so you can buy some of this content that's brand new in the world that none of those people carry. And so I view this over 2014, it's a year of experimentation. We have to hire savvy technological people to help us do some software development of our own, not just wait for vendors to solve it for us, and approach publishers and vendors to say, we want a pilot, we want an experiment, and we want to make sure that anything you sell to us works with everything else we've got.
I am inclined to agree. I do think that the industry definitely needs a better say ILS management system that's more open source, so you're not locked into dealing with a specific company, but operating by the whole GitHub philosophy where this was designed and written to be open source, sort of with EPUB 3 what Redium does. Anybody can contribute to the platform, make multimedia content, and there's a large number of companies that normally compete against each other that are all working on this open source initiative. And with APIs and ILS, I mean it's very complicated to deal with more than one company such as Overdrive or 3M, which is why a lot of libraries just deal with a singular entity. So you definitely see within the next few years that more libraries will start experimenting and deal with more than one content distribution platform as a way to get eBooks like you guys deal with Smashwords.
Yeah, I think this is a time of creative destruction. And what I mean by that is that we've had a very stable system for the distribution of books where library was kind of end of the chain. And now we're finding that as people try to have more and more control over this, there's this swelling of new content coming from outside of the usual stream. Well, the real change is that if libraries don't want to get completely marginalized by a couple of distributors and a couple of publishers, we have to reach out and form these new relationships. And I think if there's one significant new trend happening for libraries, it's that we need to have more of a direct conversation with our communities. One article I wrote recently for American Libraries is to say, people are trying to write books in our communities. How can we help them write better ones? And then say, give your book to us. We'll encourage a conversation with local community reviewers, local community acquisition editors, and help propel you to national fame because you're in our backyard. We need to form closer ties, not just with distributors, but with creators of content.
Well said. So this is Jamie LaRue of the Douglas County Library System, and of course my name is Michael Kozlowski. We're at American Library Association Annual Conference 2013.